Joel Rosenberg. Now we're going to give you an opportunity to talk back with a mini town hall that we're going to do. Once again, we ask if you do want to participate that you ask a question that is brief, right to the point, and we'll give our panel the opportunity to respond. Our panel consists of these three congressmen. From Louisiana, Representative Steve Scalise. From the great state of Texas, Representative Louie Gohmert. And from Ohio, Representative Jim Jordan. And moderating this panel will be our own Tony Perkins. Let's welcome these men as they come out to the stage right now.
All right, welcome everyone to the 2013 Values Voters Summit Town Hall meeting, where we have three of our distinguished members of Congress who have been on Capitol Hill fighting day in and day out for the conservative principles that we care about and that we represent here at the Values Voters Summit. Now, I want to give you just a disclaimer as we begin. We may have to cut our town hall short. They have called votes for this afternoon, and despite the fact that they have votes pending very shortly, they came on out because they wanted to be with you. And so I'm going to start right here. Get right into this. At my immediate right here, a good friend of mine, Congressman Steve Scalise. Steve and I served together in the Louisiana legislature. And I'm going to begin. Each will make a brief opening statement. And then we have microphones here. We have three microphones. And they're already lined up. You got it. All right. You don't need instructions from me. We'll also be taking questions by tweet. So we're going to begin immediately. Congressman Steve Scalise.
Well, thank you, Tony. Want to thank all of you with the Values Voters Summit for having us and for your passion about the things that are under attack in our country. And make no mistake about it, our traditional Judeo-Christian values are under attack in this town. I think you're well aware of the many fronts that we're doing battle, and this is a battle every day. I'm proud to be on the stage with these other two gentlemen who have been in the heart of that battle as well. And, of course, right now when we're in this government shutdown, there are a number of reasons why we are here. There are a number of reasons, big disagreement that we have with the president and his policies, but clearly one of the areas at the forefront of that is the president's health care law. If you look at what Obamacare does to go after not only our values, but to go after the very heart of religious freedom. If this was a law that was so good, you're looking at the president literally picking and choosing. He's gone after people based on their faith. His IRS has gone after people based on their views. And yet, what's the president done? He's given over 1,200 waivers to his friends in Obamacare. This is not a law that he says is so good should apply to everybody. He's chosen to selectively apply it to some and selectively waive it for others, including some of the very people who asked to pass it, like the AFL-CIO, the AARP, SEIU, and all those other wonderful groups. But he also wanted to exempt members of Congress from that law. How ludicrous is that? To say that members of Congress should be exempt while the president says everybody else in this room ought to have it applied to them. It ought to be either applied to everybody or exempt from everybody. And we want it repealed completely so that all Americans have that same exemption the president granted to his friends. Thank you for having us. Yield back to my friend Tony.
Well, Congressman Louie Gohmert from Texas represents the 1st Congressional District and another great friend of the Family Research Council. In fact, those of you who listen to Washington Watch will recognize this voice because Louie's actually sat in and hosted Washington Watch for me when I have been out. So, Congressman Gohmert, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tony. And I love Tony. He's a brother. But I'm not so stupid. I know why he's had me host Washington Watch. When he comes back after I've hosted, he is appreciated so much more. And I know that's what the deal is. All right. There's a lot going on. I could talk about all afternoon the fact that our current administration does not recognize our enemies from our friends. And over in the Middle East, we talk to allies and they wonder which one of us are going to be the next ones that you throw under the bus. When it comes to the shutdown that's going on, I heard just before I came some senator from Arizona a guy that liked Gaddafi before he wanted to bomb him, a guy that liked Mubarak before he wanted him out, a guy that's been to Syria and supported Al-Qaeda and rebels. But he was saying today, the shutdown has been a fool's errand. And I agree with him. The president and Harry Reid should not have shut this government down. Because make no mistake, we started on this course 3 years ago, in November 3 years ago, when Republicans won the majority in the House. And conventional wisdom was, if we can have a shutdown, Democrats will regain the House, the majority in the House. We'll have the House and Senate again, and we can do lots more GRE, government running everything programs. And that's what they think. That's what's been the conventional wisdom for nearly 3 years. So early in 2011, there was a shutdown coming, and what happened? Our leadership caved at the last minute at 10:30 before the shutdown at midnight. We were reasonable, had reasonable proposals, but they were so afraid of a shutdown because they knew the Democrats would do it. We'd be blamed. This has been coming for a long time because the Democrats were demanding a shutdown that they could blame on Republicans. We came back with compromise after compromise, and the fourth was simply, here's some negotiators. Appoint negotiators, and we can have this worked out by morning. But they believed the American people were so like lemmings, as we've been accused of, that were so like lemmings, they would follow the mainstream media, and you haven't bought it, America hasn't bought it, and that's why the president's at 37%, 53% favorable. They see through this. And when we stood out there at the World War II Memorial the day that they had barricaded it, and I brought my scissors, and I called Steve Palazzo over, and I said, Steve, you get that one. I got this one. I snipped the ribbon, and away we went. They were not going to keep them out, but the truth is, if we hadn't been there to do that, it would not have gotten done. And so anyway, thank you for not falling prey to the mainstream media, for seeking truth. It's a job we have to do. Thank you.
All right, Congressman Gohmert. Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio. I failed to mention Steve Scalise is the current chairman of the Republican Study Committee, which is the largest and the conservative caucus in the House of Representatives. The previous chairman is Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, one of the conservative leaders in the House that is standing firm for the issues we care so much about. Jim?
Thank you. In your personal life, in your family life, there are moments that count, moments of significance, moments of meaning, moments of magnitude. You can think about it. I mean, my wife is here somewhere. We've been married 28 years. I remember the day we were married. We have 4 kids. I remember the day they were born. Significant things that have happened to our moments and occasions that have meaning and significance. Well, sometimes those moments apply in a broader context. They apply to an entire nation. And you are all here because you understand we are at one of those moments, one of those times in American history that count. And so I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks to Tony and the great work that FRC does, to all the work you're doing. You deeply care about the principles that made our nation the greatest nation in history, and you see those being attacked, and you're willing to step forward to get off the sidelines and get in the game. And that is a huge risk. You take abuse for doing it. But if you think about history and those people, go to Scripture, whether it's Nehemiah, whether it's Daniel, whether it's Esther, people who were willing to say, I will take the risk to step into the game to make a difference. Thank you for doing it. That's what this is all about. And my favorite scripture, and I'll finish with this and we'll get to your questions, is 2 Timothy 4:7. Paul writes to Timothy, fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. It's a verse of action. It's a verse that has always characterized this great nation. Fight, finish, and keep. That's what we're all about. We're just regular Americans who care about our family, care about our country, and we're willing to fight, finish, and keep those values so we can remain the greatest nation ever. Thank you very much.
All right, here are the ground rules for our town hall. I'm going to start over here to my right, and I'm going to ask you to ask a question, no speeches. Just ask your questions. If you want to direct it to a particular member, do so. If I have to, I'll ask Gil to bring out my gavel again if I need to use that. But if not, let's just ask the question so we can get as many in as possible. So I'm going to start right over here, sir. If you'll identify yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I'm George Morgan from Virginia. Why don't we drop the charade of the continuing resolution and send the Senate a budget and tell them to work with us?
We started that process of we want to have a budget. In fact, we passed a budget all the 3 years that the Republicans have been in the majority, lays out how we actually get to a balance in 10 years. We had to shame the Senate into passing a budget for the first time in 4 years by threatening to withhold their pay if they didn't do their job. It was called No Budget, No Pay. It passed, it was signed into law, and lo and behold, after 4 years, they finally did a budget after their pay was threatened if they didn't. And it shows a contrast. Our budget balances in 10 years, gets the economy moving again with no new taxes and all these crazy mandates, including Obamacare, repealed. Their budget adds another $1 trillion of new taxes, never, ever gets to balance, and continues all the reckless economic policies. And it shows you the path that our country needs to take. One of these two options, clearly our option gets our economy moving again and solves the big problems facing our country.
Intelligent, rational people believe what you just said. And we've tried that approach, and they would not come to terms. They came up with a ridiculous budget, and they wanted to bloat the size of government instead of bringing it down. But as you probably know, there's the budget, and then there's the appropriations. And the appropriations bills are where the money is actually legislated into existence for different programs. The president doesn't want that. He wants a continuing resolution. Just give me my big sack of money, and I'll take it from there. That's not doing what the Constitution had in mind. And that's why we are at this shutdown right now, is because we have continued to propose budget, appropriations bills. We continue to send them forward, and they have said, no, we think this. They haven't said it publicly. Some of them have hinted at it publicly, but they've sure been saying it privately. If we can cause a shutdown, then we win. That's why we're where we are. And I know there are a lot of people that have what they believe are good solutions, but it comes down to this. Are we going to keep offering reasonable compromises and then stop bidding against ourselves and wait for a reasonable proposal? And reasonable does not mean the President of the United States say, I'm now willing to talk, which means I'm not going to listen. You're going to listen to me talk. And we hope we'll get to the point where we'll listen. But we've tried the reasonable approaches, and now we've said we compromise 5-6 times now. You've got to come back with an offer. And that's where we are. Do we cave completely? Some of our leaders think so. Or do we stand where we are and say we're not going to continue to capitulate fully as we did 2.5 years ago to give you everything you want?
Thank you, sir, for your question. Yes, ma'am. Your name and your question, please.
My name is Barbara England. I live here in D.C., one of 3,000 Republicans, I think. So, but my question is, since 1792, I just wondered if it's ever happened that the federal government has closed down military bases for Sunday Holy Mass to be celebrated like they did this past weekend. They didn't allow the priests to come in. And I just wonder what we can do about this. I mean, this is just another affront to our religious freedom, and it's very, very unnerving.
Yeah, clearly you know your history, but going back not to 1792, but going back to when Washington took over the revolutionary military, he wanted to see chaplains because he knew the importance of a military that recognized that God was in control. There are people in Congress say, Louie, God's in control. We don't have to worry. Well, yeah, he's been in control when he let the children of Israel have a king when he said that's not a good idea. He's been in control when Israel split into northern and southern kingdom. He's been in control when Israel fell, when Judah fell, when Jerusalem fell. He's been in control because he will allow us eventually, despite all the mercy and grace, he will allow a nation eventually to fall when it turns away from him. And Washington knew that. And Ben Franklin, for all the talk about he was a deist. I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth. God governs in the affairs of men, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it possible an empire could rise without his aid? We've been assured, sir, in the sacred writing that unless the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Firmly believe this. I firmly believe that without his concurring aid, we shall fail just as the builders of Babel. That's where we are. Washington knew that. It's never happened before, especially to threaten ministers, priests, if they come forward and conduct mass. That's never happened. And anybody that says, I'm not Catholic, it doesn't affect me, doesn't understand. They're coming for the Baptists and everybody else next. It's got to stop now.
We have a related question that has come in from tweet, and Congressman Jordan, I'm going to ask you to address this. It's related to it. This is from Chandler. What kind of action do you see taking place at the federal level to ensure that our First Amendment free exercise of religion is reinforced?
Well, here's the good news. There's people all over the country who take their First Amendment religious liberty rights, they take them as being special and being a First Amendment right, who are suing the government. We have a business owner, Frank and Phil Gilardi, Freshway Foods, Sydney, Ohio, who said, you know what, this is wrong, and we're suing the government. So those cases are moving. I think we're going to win. Now, we hate when the length of time it takes and going through the courts, but I think we're going to win on that. In the House, what we're trying to do is restore conscience rights, religious liberty rights, so that this Obamacare, you probably know there have been all kinds of suits, some of the action that the administration has taken to give a one-year kind of safe harbor and all. We need these cases to move forward. And here's the good news. Like I said, people are stepping forward and say, this is so important. This is so fundamental to who we are as a nation. We're willing to risk it. We're willing to go to court. And God bless the Beckett Foundation and others who are helping with these actions. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to win in court and restore what should never have been infringed upon in the first place.
Will we see the House take a stand when it comes to the continuing resolution or the debt ceiling and the conscience rights?
Chairman Scalise and I and Louie, we've been pushing for this. There are different opportunities to do it. We are talking about it all the time. Again, we all in this room know how fundamental, Americans know how, this is, you think about the folks who started this place. They were willing to risk it all. But in Europe, they said, you have to practice your faith a certain way. And they said, no, we don't. We're willing to risk it all, get on a boat, come to America, and do it the way we think the good Lord wants us to. And so it's what started the country. And now to have it attacked by the administration is, so we understand how important this is. This is fundamental. This is as basic as it gets. And so there are lots of members of Congress who are pushing to do the right thing.
Thank you.
Hey, Tony, can I just add real quickly? A lot of these things will, again, be decided at the Supreme Court, but you are so important. I just want to tell you, someone who was at the Supreme Court in 1973, inside what was going on, said that the Supreme Court justices had never been more shocked in the last 40 years, 50 years, than they were at the outcry after Roe versus Wade. They had no idea that people felt that strongly about that issue because the cocktail parties most of them went to, they didn't talk like that. It is important that the Supreme Court know how the people of America feel because nobody wants to be hated by the vast majority of people that they have cases over, and that's coming from a former judge and Chief Justice.
Yes, ma'am. Your name and your question, please.
Hi, my name is Julie Tripp. I live in Plymouth, Minnesota. My husband and I own a small business. We employ 20 people. We do provide health insurance for them, but we've been informed that starting in 2014, our plan will no longer be available to us to purchase. I am quite concerned that I don't want to force my family and the rest of our employees' families into the exchanges in Minnesota because I don't trust that they really do have our best interests at heart and that it will be a quality health care. And so first of all, I'd like to implore you, plead with you to stay firm, to continue this fight that you're fighting. it has an impact on real life people who work every day and go to school, go to work, try to do the right thing for their families and their neighbors. And second of all, what I want to know from you specifically is this. I want to know, as an average citizen, what can I and others like me do to impact what's going on, both on the local level and on the national level? How can we get your attention? How can we let our legislators know and have an impact on how they vote? I'm tired of the lobbyists owning it. I'm tired of big business. I want our legislators to listen to us. We're the people.
I wish it could happen quick. We're fighting the fight on the inside as hard as we can. But here's how we do it in America. We have elections. I mean, it's just the way it works. And I know we always think next election, and we get impatient. But that's how it goes. If we can take back the United States Senate, elect more conservatives in the Senate, and now good pieces of legislation that we've sent to the House that go to the Senate, Harry Reid doesn't even debate them, let alone pass them. If they now get passed and are sitting on the president's desk, you change the dynamic in American politics. And here's the good news. Next year, you got Louisiana, Arkansas, North Carolina, South Dakota, Minnesota, Alaska, states that we can win, particularly those states I mentioned in the South. I'll use one example, Arkansas. Tom Cotton run against Mark Pryor. Tom Cotton's an amazing candidate, one of our colleagues, great, already tearing into Pryor with some ads in Arkansas. If we take back the Senate, and I know it's long and slow, but that's how the founders designed this wonderful country and our political system. You take back the Senate, bill's now set on the president's desk, and he can't hide behind Harry Reid. It's a different dynamic in American politics, and it fundamentally begins to change the debate. And it's just how we got to do it. So helping those states. You're in Minnesota, work in Minnesota, but also if you got a few extra dollars that they're not taking all your money in Obamacare from, and you got a few extra dollars, send it to Arkansas to help Tom Cotton, or Louisiana to help beat Mary Landrieu, and look at those opportunities.
Thank you. No offense, but to my far left over here, name and your question.
Good afternoon, Congressman. My name is Max McGuire, and I'm from the People's Republic of New Jersey. My question is about the Second Amendment, and the three of you have each received A or A+ ratings from the NRA. So I know that you understand that the right to keep and bear arms is an individual right. Well, my question is about the bearing part of that. In 42 states, including the three of yours, there is a right to bear arms. People can conceal carry as long as they are not a criminal or mentally deficient. But in my state, in New Jersey, the Federal Appeals Court just ruled that it's constitutional for my state to require me to show a justifiable need to exercise my constitutional right. And that benchmark is impossible. You have to either have a lot of money or be sleeping with a judge. So my question to the three of you, coming from these states where concealed carry is a part of your life, and considering the fact that 42 states have this right, what can Congress do to ensure that the right to keep and bear arms applies to all citizens, not just those in red states?
Well, first of all, the first thing we did was handily wage a battle to defeat President Obama's gun control agenda, which he's pushing still to this day. We've been fighting on every front. I was proud to be with Tony, a co-sponsor, when I was in the State House, and Tony was in the State House in Louisiana, our concealed carry permit. It actually reduced crime, even though all these gun control folks said it would increase crime. Crime went down because the criminals don't know who's got guns now. And so we need to make sure that every American citizen has the right to arm and defend themselves. It is not about a militia run by the government. It's about every individual having that right to defend themselves and their family. And that's what we're going to continue to fight for in legislation on every front in Congress.
And Max, just making sure, you're talking about sleeping with a judge. You know I'm not a judge anymore, right? Okay, just want to be sure. Just want to be sure.
Louie, I need to talk to you about that. Remember that date I gave you about the radio program? We can take another question from via tweet. This is Josue. What are we doing, or what can we do to focus on the core issue of reducing government influence and size? Who wants to take that one on?
Well, it's all about the budget. I mean, you want to enhance liberty. You keep government limited and small, and you do that by not giving it all your tax money or as much of your tax money as it currently takes. Right now, we're basically in a fight. The president talks about revenue every single day. It seems like he wants more of your money. So we got to stop that and then begin to scale it back. And we have done that. I think there was a question earlier about our budget and our vision. The budget we put out, Republicans put out, conservatives put out, actually gets to balance, doesn't raise any taxes. The budget that the Senate finally put out after 4 years raises a boatload of taxes and never, ever, ever, ever balances. So that you have those two visions, you have elections, and you make it work. But you're right. If you want to enhance freedom, you got to limit government, and you do it by not letting them take any more of your money.
And think about this. There are no better examples than the incubators of great ideas, every state. If you want to know how the size of government works, look at the states that are liberal utopias. Start with the president's home state of Illinois. The Democrats control everything. They've got the highest tax rates. Incidentally, they've got the highest debt ratio. They've got some of the highest unemployment in the nation. And then you contrast that with some of the states like where Louie and I are from, and Jim, where you have conservative governors with conservative legislatures where they're lowering taxes. We've got some of the lowest unemployment and some of the lowest debt loads. So clearly you can see the difference between big government and how it fails people, and smaller government, how it frees people.
And let me... And this is consistent with what a couple of you have asked already. What can you do? Well, what sent Republican leaders scurrying this morning was a Wall Street Journal NBC poll saying Republicans are really getting hammered over the shutdown. I don't believe that because, nobody is ever like Congress. That's always been it, But what can you do? Listen, folks, if you haven't written a letter to the editor of your local newspaper at least once every 6 months, and I'd recommend once a month, then you're not helping like you could. If you're not calling in to the newspaper and complaining about leftist articles they've done, and especially opinions they do, if you haven't called your television stations and complained about things, you're not doing what you can do. And when you let your voice be heard, Congress always follows, because, listen, the truism has always been consistent that democracy ensures people are governed no better than they deserve. You may not have wanted Barack Obama for your president, but he is who this nation deserved on Election Day. And you may not have liked George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or George H.W. Bush or Ron. At that point in time on Election Day, we got who we deserved. Now, we need to be about deserving better leaders.
Good action steps there. I hope you're taking notes. Good action steps from Congressman Gohmert there. I hope you will actually do that. All right, over here to my right, your name and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Shelley Huey. I'm from Los Angeles, California. And I want to say you guys are true patriots. And thank you for being on the front lines on the war on freedom. My question is, how can we pray for you?
Well, that's an easy one for me. I don't need prayers for courage. That is not a problem. Seriously, I need prayers for wisdom. Because if you're ready to fight all the time, then that's where you get attacked. You get drawn out into things, fighting things that are really distracting you from job one. So I could use prayers for wisdom. I know God said, if you ask for wisdom, I'll give it. But what has always bothered me about that is he doesn't give a timeline. And I know to the Lord 1 day is like 1,000 years. And they're just, I could use some sooner rather than later. So thank you.
I think Louie covered it.
But I appreciate the prayers. We really do.
And make no mistake, there are some people that need prayers for courage. So don't give up on that one for Congress overall. I'm just not sitting with them.
If I might, before we go to our next question, what you're seeing here is a representation of a large group of men and women who are in the Congress, who are there for the right reason, doing the right thing the right way. Now, and that was an excellent question, because we are commanded as Christians to pray for those in authority. And often we see only those on MSNBC or CNN that they highlight who are often against the values and the views that we hold and that built this country. But there are many, and an increasing number on Capitol Hill, that are there, and we need to pray for them. So thank you for reminding us of that. All right, we're going to work in a couple more questions. We're almost out of time, but sir, your name and question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. My name is Adam Headley. I'm 17 years old. I'm from the great state of Ohio, like Congressman Jordan. There we go. And I am at this conference with Teen Pact Leadership Schools this week. And so that was a fantastic question, ma'am. That's one of the most important questions that can be asked. I was going to ask that myself. But my second question is, aside of both Republicans and Democrats working to find middle ground with each other, what specifically needs to be done to bring this government shutdown to an end? What specific steps need to be taken to get things running in Washington again?
It's pretty easy. When the president and Harry Reid see that the American public have seen through their smokescreen, that they are the ones that shut the government down, that they are intentionally making Americans suffer unnecessarily like has never been done in a shutdown before, you will see the shutdown come to a conclusion overnight.
It's a simple principle. It's called fairness and equal treatment under the law. Right now, the way Obamacare works is big business get a break, members of Congress get a break, but the American people are forced, now think about this, we've been at this 10 days now with these exchanges. The American people are forced to go to a website, sign up for a program. The website doesn't work. Sign up for an insurance policy that they can't afford because the law makes them do it. That is unfair. I mean, one of the hallmark principles, just like religious liberty, hallmark principles of this nation is you are treated equally under the law. So right now, what President Obama has said, my friends in big business, they're not mandated to do what the law specifically says they have to do. Members of Congress, you're not mandated to do what the law specifically says you have to do. But, oh, by the way, all of you have to do it. And the agency that's going to enforce this all is the same agency that targeted groups. Now think about this. That targeted groups who came into existence because they opposed Obamacare. They used it. So, and we're supposed to all just sit back and say, oh, this is wonderful? This is as wrong could be. And if you, I don't know, some of you may have caught, we had a hearing this last week. Sarah Hall Ingram, Lois Lerner's direct boss, when the targeting took place, after she left that position, she became the lady in charge of implementing the Affordable Care Act, the IRS. She was trading, according to the IRS, confidential information back and forth with the White House. And this is the same agency that now enforces the Obamacare Act that the law makes you sign up for, that they don't make big business and members of Congress sign up for. And you wonder why Americans are upset about it? So that's how you do it. They got to understand fairness.
And keep this in mind. Clearly, we're a divided nation, and there's divided government. It didn't just happen by accident. There's a Republican House. There's a Democrat Senate, Democrat White House. So the Congress up here is representative of the divided nation. In divided nation, people disagree. Clearly, there are big disagreements we have with this president, but adults sit in a room and they work through those differences to see if they can come up with solutions. You don't sit there and say, give me everything I want, give me a government run exactly the way I want it, as the president suggested. Otherwise, I will shut everything down. That's not how things work. And the president tries to make this fight over Obamacare a partisan issue. It's far from a partisan issue. First person to give waivers from Obamacare was Barack Obama. 1,200 waivers he's given. We'll get you the list. 1,200, and by the way, it's a lot of his friends who helped pass it. Then he went and said big business gets a waiver. Insurance companies, he gave them a waiver from Obamacare. And so when we sit up here and say all we're fighting for is fairness for all Americans so that American families can have the same fairness that the president's given to the chosen few, the political class, including members of Congress, and it's not just Republicans. James Hoffa, the head of the Teamsters Union, no friend of ours up here, James Hoffa said that Obamacare is destroying the middle-class work week. Why would we want to sit back and let a program go forward that's destroying the middle-class work week, even according to James Hoffa? So that's what this is about. It's about fairness.
We have...
Well, I just want people to understand, though, under the Obamacare law, members of Congress and most of our staffs are losing our insurance, and we have to choose from the exchange, but they have rigged it in a way that would continue to get subsidies on it. But I've lost my HSA insurance and high deductible I thought we had, and that's what Obamacare does. So if you like your insurance, yeah, forget it.
We just got notice they have called the votes, and so I just want to. I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to answer any more questions. We're going to have to let them go to get back. I'm sure you want them to take care of the business they've been elected to do. But one.
All right, great job. Folks, let me mention very quickly